Thanks again, guys. You've been great. We are going to have a 50-50 tonight, so Pat and I will be walking around while our guest speaker, Mr. Paul Oland, speaks, and I have a few things to say about Paul. I forgot my notes. Oh, here we go. All right, our guest speaker tonight is Mr. Paul Oland. As I mentioned, he's a longtime member of our organization. His speech is titled From Goose Goslin to Mike Trout. Paul is a retired educator and has served his community well as a two-term Gloucester County freeholder. He will speak about his 15 years of playing first base for Swedesboro in the Salem County Baseball League. He was named to the All-Star team 9 times. He has written numerous articles about South Jersey baseball history and North Atlantic baseball history. So let's hear it for him, guys. Mr. Paul Oland. Paul.
Thank you, Ron, very much, and it's great to see some old friends and teammates here tonight. Brings back a lot of fond memories. But before I talk about the subject tonight, Goose Goslin to Mike Trout, South Jersey baseball history, I just want to talk a little bit about my playing days. Way back in 1969, I was captain of the Kingsway Regional High School baseball team. From there, I went on and played some ball at Glassboro State, and then joined the Swedesboro AC of the Salem County Baseball League. Now, in those days, the Salem County League had some very good teams and some top-notch ball players. There were fellows who were college players. We had some former minor league players. And there were also some players who signed out of the Salem County League into professional baseball and went on to minor league careers. But we had one player, Larry Milbourne of the Bridgeton Stars, who signed with Seattle, and then he actually went on and played 8 years in the major leagues as an infielder for the Mariners, the Yankees, and the Phillies. But one of my most memorable games was not played in South Jersey. I was down in Valdosta, Georgia, visiting at my aunt's house, and I read in the local paper that their semi-pro team, the Valdosta Pepsi Red Sox, were going to be playing down in Florida that weekend. I called the manager. I said, I'm a ball player from New Jersey. I'm just down here visiting for a few days, but I'd like to see your team play. He said, fine, we'll pick you up Saturday morning. So the station wagon pulls in Saturday morning, and he comes out with a uniform. And he said, what position do you play? And I said, well, normally I play first base, but I haven't picked up a bat recently. He said, well, you look like you're in good shape. He said, you're going to bat leadoff and play center field today. So I said, well, okay, but I'll do the best I can. Well, we're driving down to Florida with a couple of the other players, and he said, or I said, who are we playing today? And he said, Rayford, Florida, Rayford State Prison, maximum security prison, murderers, armed robbers, and I gulped. And then he said, they only play home games. And, and I said, I can understand why. So we get down to this prison out in the middle of nowhere in the swamps of Florida. And we go through the gate and get frisked and go through a tunnel, and there's the ball field. And their team is out warming up before the game. And I came to find out later that 500 inmates try out for the prison team, but only 14 make it. But those 14 do nothing but practice baseball every day from 8 in the morning until 5 o'clock, which is a lot better than sitting in a cell all day, for sure. So we got in, the game started, and they had a good ball club. The second time up to bat, I got a single, and I was standing out at first base. The umpires were also inmates, and the base ump walks by, and he has a thick bandage from the back of his head to the corner of his eye. And I said to him, well, what happened to you? He said, oh, a guy hit me with a tire iron. And I said, okay. So the game went on, and they actually beat us in 12 innings, 7-5. And I saw a lot of good baseball talent in that prison. But anyway, after the game, we gathered up our equipment, and we go out to the main gate, but there's nobody there. And we waited, and we waited, and we were there a good half hour. Finally, a guard came by, and our manager said, hey, how about letting us out of here? We want to go home. And so they did, and we finally headed back up to Georgia. But that was a day in my life that I will never forget. Now let's go back to the earliest days of professional baseball. Way back in 1886, a player named Hardy Richardson led the major leagues in home runs. And why do I bring up Hardy Richardson's name? Because he was from Clarksboro, 4 miles down the road from here. Going into the 20th century, Whitey Witt was a fine outfielder in the American League for a number of years, was a teammate on the Yankees of Babe Ruth's. Whitey Witt for many, many years had a farm in Alloway, and he used to attend this dinner every year until his death in 1988. A contemporary of Whitey Witt's was Leon Goose Goslin. Born in Salem in 1900, Goslin did a lot of farm work as a boy, grew into a big, strong 5'11", 185-pounder, and he gained quite a reputation as a strong-armed right-handed pitcher in leagues in and around Salem. One day when he was 18, a scout saw him play. He also, by the way, swung a pretty strong left-handed bat. And the scout saw him pitch and he saw him hit. And he said, I can get you signed to a professional contract with a minor league team down in Columbia, South Carolina. He said, but you're going as an outfielder, not as a pitcher, because I've seen that strong left-handed bat, and that's your future in the game. So Goose signed on the dotted line, went down and had 2 great years in Columbia, and then in 1921 was signed by the Washington Senators. 1922 was his first full season in Major League Baseball. He hit .324, led the American League in triples, and through the 1920s, he batted over 300 every year for Washington, 11 times drove in over 100 runs. He was also a star in the World Series. 1924 and 1925, the Senators won the American League pennant. They won the World Series in 1924, and he led the way with his heavy hitting. In 1928, he led the American League in batting with a .379 average. And in 1930 was traded to the St. Louis Browns, kept up his great hitting. Then in 1934, he went over to the Detroit Tigers. The Tigers won the pennant in 34 and 35. In 1935, he had the game-winning hit in the last game of the World Series to give the Tigers the World Championship. Now, Goose, after an 18-year career, put up some tremendous numbers. .316 lifetime batting average, 248 home runs, 1,609 runs batted in. He had 500 doubles in his career. And after 18 years, he came home to Salem, ran businesses, a couple of different businesses for a number of years. But in 1967, a group of local ex-ball players from this area got together, and they said, why isn't Goose Goslin in the Hall of Fame? His numbers were as good, if not better, than many of the players who were in the Hall at that time. So they decided to do something about it. They were led by a man named Cy Eastlack, who for many years owned Ace Motors in Woodbury. And some of the others involved included Jack Scott, Chiz Harmon from Pittman. Bob Shryock at that time was the sports editor of the Woodbury Times. He did a lot of the publicity for them. And lo and behold, their petition drive was successful. The next year, 1968, Goose Goslin was elected by the Veterans Committee to the Hall of Fame. Well, this group of old-time ball players were so thrilled they held a banquet in Goose Goslin's honor. It was a big success, and they decided, hey, well, let's have a baseball dinner every year. As a result, the South Jersey Baseball Old Timers was formed. Tonight is the 54th annual dinner of the organization. A man that I knew, Earl Rapp, was a four-sports star at Swedesboro High School. Earl graduated in 1940, was signed by the Phillies shortly after, spent 2 very good years in the minor leagues. But then World War II broke out, and in May 1942, Earl Rapp joined the U.S. Army. He saw action in Italy, in Africa, and in France. I'm now going to read you a portion of a newspaper article that ran in the Swedesboro News in 1945. First, I have to get my glasses on. Okay, this is from the Swedesboro News in 1945, a portion of the article. Here we are. For gallantry in action, a former Swedesboro High School athlete has been honored. Fighting the Nazis in France on December 12, 1944, his platoon was attacked, and as a squad leader, he opened fire on the enemy, killing or wounding 5 Nazis. He then infiltrated through the enemy lines, wading 200 yards through a chest-deep stream, and brought back 2 comrades who had been wounded during the battle. For his bravery, Army Sergeant Earl W. Rapp was awarded the Silver Star, one of our country's highest military honors. Well, Earl was quite a man, and after the war he returned to baseball, and in 1949 he made his major league debut with the Detroit Tigers, but he was traded shortly after that to the Chicago White Sox, where he played left field for them. But Earl was a man on the move. From the White Sox, he went to the New York Giants, the St. Louis Browns, and the Washington Senators. He led the American League in pinch hitting in 1952 and had a lifetime batting average, a respectable .261, as a left-handed hitting outfielder. But Earl wasn't done with baseball. Houston came calling, and they were looking to beef up their scouting department. They hired him as a scout, and he stayed with the Astros for 17 years. He signed several prominent players. And from Houston, he went on and scouted for Kansas City for 5 years, then on to the Montreal Expos, and finally the Cincinnati Reds. He had a 50-year legacy in our national pastime, and I enjoyed talking to him on a number of occasions. He had some great stories, and one I do remember. He, as a rookie, was batting against the great Cleveland Fireball pitcher, Bob Feller. Had a great fastball. Went on to the Hall of Fame. But Feller was on the mound for Cleveland. Earl stepped into the batter's box, and here comes a crackling fastball. Earl swings and misses, strike 1. Another blazing fastball comes across. Earl swings and misses, strike 2. The third pitch was another fireball, but it was low. So Earl took the pitch. But the umpire calls out, strike 3. And Earl couldn't believe it. He turned around to argue with the umpire, and he pointed downward, and he said to the ump, "Did you see where that pitch was?" And the ump said, "No, but it sounded like a strike." Now to talk about a few other players who have made an impact from South Jersey in the major leagues. One that comes to mind is Vineland's Don Money, who played for the Phillies and the Milwaukee Brewers. Money was a third baseman who set an American League record in 1974 when he played 86 consecutive games without making an error. And then there's Orel Hershiser, a great pitcher for the Dodgers. Hershiser set a major league record in 1988 when he pitched 59 consecutive innings without giving up a run. 59 consecutive shutout innings, and I don't think that record's ever going to be broken. Another fine pitcher was Raleigh Eastwick from Haddonfield, and Raleigh was a top-notch relief pitcher back in the 1970s. And then there was a couple of local boys who, although they didn't have long major league careers, I do want to mention Mullica Hill's Jeff Datz played briefly as a catcher, but then spent many years as a coach with Cleveland and Seattle. He was a third base coach, and he retired in 2015. And also a young fellow who I had the pleasure of beating, Dan Meyer, pitched about 15 years ago in the major leagues for both the Braves and the Marlins. And let's not forget the Negro Leaguers, two fine gentlemen who I had the pleasure of meeting, Max Manning from Atlantic City and Harold Gould from Cumberland County, were top-notch pitchers in the Negro Leagues back in the 1940s, but they never got a chance to play Major League Ball because of the color of their skin. As you know, the color line wasn't broken until Jackie Robinson joined the Dodgers in 1947. And how about that pitcher Monday night, Zach Gallen for the Diamondbacks? Zach Gallen's one of the top starting pitchers in the National League, but the Phillies sure didn't have any problems with him Monday. He's from Stratford, and certainly I'm sure he has many more good seasons ahead of him, as long as he doesn't pitch against the Phillies. Now I want to get to the player that I'm sure many of you have seen on TV, if not in person, the Millville Thunderbolt, Mike Trout. Mike is a big, strapping 6'2", 235-pounder, and has spent his entire career with the Angels as an outfielder. Mike had, in 2012, his rookie season, the award is the American League Rookie of the Year. He led the league in stolen bases that year. And for the next 3 years, he led the American League in runs scored. In 2015 and 2016, Mike became the only player in Major League history to be the most valuable player of the All-Star game 2 years in a row. He's had some big home run years, 45 one year, 41 another, a 10-time American League All-Star. Mike has a lifetime batting average of .301, has hit 368 home runs, and most impressively, he is one of only 5 players in American League history who have been named the most valuable player of the American League 3 different times. Quite an honor. And the other names, how about Joe DiMaggio, Yogi Berra, Mickey Mantle, Jimmy Fox? That's pretty good company. Well, Mike, unfortunately, the last 2 years has had a lot of injuries and missed a lot of games. But if he's healthy, he's still only 32. I believe he can come back with another big year in 2024. There's rumors that he'll be traded, so he might be in a different uniform. But wherever he's playing, I have a strong suspicion that he'll be swinging the bat and is on his way to a career in Cooperstown where he will join Goose Goslin as South Jersey's greatest all-time ball players. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul. Let's hear it once again. Paul Oland. Thank you very much, Paul. That was great.